Good afternoon, all. We will be starting in 5 minutes, sharp at 4 p.m.
Hello, everyone. Hi, good afternoon, good evening.
Hello, sir.
I'm all set to start anytime as per the.
Yes, sir. In 2 to 3 minutes, we will start.
Okay, great. Very good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all for second day of faculty development program on outcome-based education. I welcome our eminent speaker Ajay Bhagwat sir. I
Thank you.
also welcome I also welcome our honorable director, Professor R.G. Kaduskar sir, all faculty members and participants. On day one, Bhagwat sir explained about advanced level concepts of OBE. We had a very fruitful and interactive session, sir. So today's session is on outcomes, attainment, computation, and analysis. I know all are eager to gain more knowledge from sir. So I request Bhagwat sir to please take over the session. Please, sir.
Sure. Thank you. So, just like yesterday, I will keep asking the participants to keep their questions ready. I'm going to now share my screen. Please allow me. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
So I'm going to recap our yesterday's discussion in the beginning. Are we good to go? Or
Yes, sir.
okay, great. So let me pull out the other. So this is what we discussed yesterday. We have to call BSc, BCom, BBA, BTech as the programs, or MTech, MSc, MBA are programs, and courses are like corporate tax, theory of machines, structural analysis. These are the courses. Then we discussed this definition of OB. We discussed about why OB is related with continuous improvement. We looked at the graduate attributes. This is a modified list of graduate attributes now, which also addresses uh, attributes such as information and digital literacy, which is now required for the students in 21st century. Then we discussed program articulation metrics. If we have to borrow the attributes from the standard list of graduate attributes for the given program, it will look something like this. So it will have to inherit the properties of the three categories that are there for graduate attributes. Likewise, those properties have to be inherited by the program outcomes chosen by us for the given program. And then the designer, the program designer, or the coordinator, or the director has to think about what courses will help the students to achieve those program outcomes. Then the teaching learning begins, and when the students go through this graduation program, the teaching and learning that happens in the institute helps the students to achieve, these one of the dream goals that student has, for which the student decides to undertake the higher education. So one of these goals that the students have in mind requires to be achieved by them. If not many students are able to achieve their goals for which they had decided to take higher education, then we may have to look at what possible gaps are. And the moment we start talking about the gaps in the teaching and the learning process, we need to look at how the teacher is teaching and what the teacher is teaching and how the students are learning. So we then have to take a look at the four dimensions of the knowledge: factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. Likewise, we have to look at the cognitive process associated with learning. And then the next step is to identify the gaps, and identifying the gaps with respect to the cognitive process is essential here. So if the teacher is teaching factual knowledge, it has to be pre-decided by the teacher at what level the assessment of the student has to be done. What level in the sense? On the scale of the cognitive process. Generally, if we limit the scope of assessment of factual knowledge to a level of, let's say, apply, then the question also has to be framed accordingly. If the teacher is teaching conceptual knowledge, then again, to identify the gaps, the teacher has to frame the question in such a way that an appropriate level of cognitive process is evaluated by virtue of asked. This question could be asked in the classroom while the teaching is happening, or it could be a part of a simple examination or quiz, uh, which is formative or summative. But essentially the goal here is to find the gaps in the cognitive process of the students. This was the example we discussed about a mental rubric, uh, which was, this concept was brought in to emphasize that outcome-based education is not a foreign concept. It is not something new. It is about changing the perspective of what is already happening, and the changed perception requires us to find out, analyze the the progression of the student happening with respect to every question being asked, and find out how many students are actually there in these bins of the cognitive process. An example was taken by us of a question of 4 marks, and when we discussed the process of grading that the teacher employs, and based on the clarity that the teacher observes in the answer given by the student, teacher assigns the grades. And if you analyze the marks awarded by the teacher for every question in this manner, we can easily identify the gaps. And if there are targets associated, targets are required benchmarks. Instead of targets, let's start calling those as benchmarks. And then if we find that there are not sufficient students in a particular bin of the cognitive process, then there is a need for some remedial action, due to which, with the help of the remedial action, the teacher is then could improve the cognitive process or cognition of the students in terms of the outcomes that are expected to be achieved. So this is the continuous improvement process that we looked at. When we discuss the categories of the fields, our journey starts towards designing of a program, from the scratch. So we took an example of a responsibility given to a teacher to create a program from the scratch. This program did not exist in the past. What would have to be done then? If first step is to borrow the program outcomes from the list of graduate attributes, and then once the program outcomes are identified, which are following in the categories of knowledge, skill, and behavior, then the next step is to identify the courses that will help student to achieve those desired program outcomes. So the knowledge category of the program outcomes have to have some courses which will deliver factual and conceptual knowledge. The program outcomes which fall in the category of the skills will have to have courses which will teach the student the procedural knowledge, and the courses, the program outcomes that fall into category of metacognitive attributes will have to have courses or the activities, opportunities, assignments which will help them achieve those program level outcomes related to attitude. And then next is we took an example. This thought is extended or depicted with the help of this diagram here, and we took example of 2 courses, and we were debating the requirements of how the course outcomes also have to be designed, by keeping in the mind the association of this course with the program outcome, right? So what we did so far is we have a goal of designing a completely new program for which we took program outcomes by referring the graduate attributes. Then we decided to identify the courses which for each of the category of the POs, and we collected the courses, and then now we are looking at how do I measure the outcomes of the students for every course, and make sure that the most of the students are achieving the desired outcomes at each level. So that's why there has to be the next level of discussion, which is about designing the course outcomes. And then for that, once again, we have to take the reference of the association of the course with the PO. And if the course is supposed to be there to fulfill the requirement of a specific program outcome, then naturally the students exhibit the understanding or attainment of the course outcome, which are designed to make sure that the factual or conceptual knowledge is achieved. Likewise, the procedural knowledge expected to be achieved with the help of second course here, and naturally the influence of this will be seen on the design process of the course outcome, because we want the student to achieve those outcomes so that they automatically fulfill the requirements of the PO6 here in this case. Once the course outcomes are designed, the next step is to create questions, design questions, frame the questions, which will measure the outcomes of the students for each of the course outcome associated with each course. These questions could be part of the formative and summative assessments, and they obviously then show their association, their relationship with, again, the same the characteristics that we inherited right from the top. And here the question is being asked by the student, rather by the teacher, to identify the gaps in their cognitive process. Unless and until the student achieve those certain desired levels in their cognition as per the cognitive process, the outcomes are not possible to achieve by the desired percentage of the student. We know that it is impossible to target 100% of the students are achieving 100% of the goals. It is impossible. That's why we consider reasonable benchmarks at every level, and we have to fight for hitting those benchmarks. And for that, we have questions defined which will help us achieve those defined benchmarks. If we find the gaps, then the remedial actions have to be taken to help students achieve those desired benchmark for every course. And that's the association here in top to bottom. Now, this is where we were yesterday. And now before we begin this next couple of sections from our advanced level outcome-based education concepts, let me check whether there are any questions already before I go ahead with this.
Yes, sir. There is one question from Suparnakar. Can varied levels of proficiency in answering the same question be used to refer to different levels of cognition with reference to RBT?
Actually, your first few words I missed because of flickering connection. Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. Can varied levels of proficiency.
Okay, so varied level of proficiency, and here the proficiency is a rubric used for in parallel to the cognitive process. So this proficiency will be a rubric used for the skill level program outcomes. So if you would like to measure the skill level program outcomes, naturally an activity created to measure that will have to measure with the help of the proficiency. So typically the proficiency is measured with the scale of let's say developing, or maybe not satisfactory, satisfactory, exemplary is one of the Likert scale that can be used. But there are a couple of such uh, related proficiencies, the levels are used. And then finally what we are doing there, we are applying actually the same concept that we discussed about the cognitive process. So then you will have to have a rubric to say what you will observe and say that the student's performance wasn't satisfactory, was satisfactory, and it was excellent or exemplary. So this is again that the methodology that is to be used for identifying the number of students who fall in each of these buckets is the same. Methodology is same, only the technique might change. I mean, you may use a different scale here to measure the student performance. You'll use a different rubric here, but the methodology is same. Did I answer your question, Professor?
Sir, if I may just step in, this is Suparna here.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was with respect to the example that you had shared. So when you were looking at the questions, so we were looking at the same question, and based on the proficiency of the answers that the students were giving, we were looking at it in terms of remember, understand, and apply. So my question was with respect to that. I mean, is it, if we align, remember, understand, and apply with RBT, I know you gave us a cautionary note yesterday, but if we align it with RBT, would it be possible for us to use the same question to measure the attainment across these different levels?
Not necessarily. As I mentioned, here when you are measuring the cognitive process, you are limiting your scope according to the knowledge level that is being delivered. So in the if you are asking a question for, let's say, related to a procedural knowledge in the exam, which is written exam, then there are limitations for you automatically that are bound by the environment in which the student is answering that question. The moment the student steps out and does some other activity in which the environment changes, so naturally there are different dimensions attached to that kind of procedural knowledge exhibition. So the scope of the question itself changes according to the assignment that you are creating. That is a point I wanted to drive here. So the scope of the question here for a written exam for the procedural knowledge, if you may say that a simple example of mathematical equation has to be used, or a structural analysis has to be done by, a problem is given and analysis has to be done. All they have to do is think about the methods to be used, steps to be taken by them to arrive at their analysis and the conclusions. Everything is happening on a piece of paper here. They are not stepping out at all. However, so this question will have a limited scope of identifying the cognitive process, whether or not they could analyze here and or evaluate something. Now you want them to, let's say, go out of the classroom and do some field work. Then the assignment itself will change, and then the dimensions that you will use to measure the proficiency will also have to change accordingly. Let me show you something which probably will help you get this. So here, if you are measuring the skills, you may use a different scale to do that: novice, advanced beginner, or competent, proficient, expert, right? And then for you to measure these proficiency, the actions will have to change. If you want them to be evaluated at this level, exceptionally, consistent, assured, and spontaneous actions have to be shown. Yeah, these assignments altogether have to be different here. Only then the evaluation at that level is possible.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'm not sure whether still I was able to give the answer to your question, but let me know if I need to further elaborate on this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So let's now go ahead with this topic now. I hope that we could establish the relationship between the graduate attributes, program outcomes, course outcomes was the step at which we reached. And now we have to discuss this step here in details. We talked about what course outcomes are, and this is very clear now that this is what something the students have to achieve when they learn the knowledge delivered by a course. We know that we are consistently talking about three categories: attitude, skill, and knowledge, or knowledge, skill, and attitude. And naturally, the course outcomes also have to inherit these properties required here. Those who are interested to know more about one more term, that is set of terms used to designate knowledge, skill, and attitude, is cognition, psychomotor, and affective domain are the three domains that are used, also referred to as define the characteristics required for the outcomes in knowledge, skill, and attitude. So these different domains, cognitive domains, or cognition domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain are actually represented by the graduate attributes. Likewise, program outcomes, likewise the course outcomes have to represent the requirements of these three domains for the complete, full, satisfied, design of a program. So once again, let us bring back the case that we have taken here for a discussion, that we are right now trying to design a program from the scratch. It did not exist in the past at all, and that is the journey we are on to here. So here we also had our discussion about the importance of COs being measurable, and the vehicle for measuring the attainment of the CO is question. And those questions could be at different levels, right? Of cognitive levels, we have set of questions. If you want to measure the students at skill level, but by assigning them an activity which is to be performed by them outside of the classroom, then the different level of measurement could be used. The cognitive level may not be useful there. And when it comes to attitude level program outcomes, course outcomes, then you may want to use another rubric which is useful for you to measure the attitude level course outcomes. So these are the little more advanced topics of measuring the outcomes. But let us first of all think about how to design those, and then we can then have a word about how to measure those outcomes. So here I have taken an example of a course. Let me just roll it back. You can think of your own course of the current semester, and check whether you can clearly see your units given in the textbook. And obviously, there are 5 to 6 units that you can easily identify. The next step is a little difficult, but still possible, is identifying what knowledge dimensions are associated with each of these units. The reason we are stuck by this idea of identifying the knowledge levels delivered by each unit is that is a fragmentation done of a complete book of, let's say, 350 pages. And then that's the agreed norm of grouping, clubbing the knowledge, chunks of the knowledge that are delivered. And then that's the way I'm also trying to represent it here. So it complicates the thing a little bit, but essentially we are trying to develop a model, right? And this model may not be perfect. It may not be applicable in all the cases, but it gives us a perspective. And having this perspective is very important right now. And that is what I'm trying to create here. So the knowledge dimensions are to be identified, what each unit is trying to do. And then you, if it is possible, try to group those. Let's say you are clubbing all those factual knowledge, but it may not be possible to group, so you want to still keep it separate. But wherever possible, let's say you decided to group these knowledge dimensions to create blocks of knowledge. Okay, let's say you finally came up with 6 blocks in which factual, conceptual, and procedural knowledge is being delivered by the course. If we have to now decide how to measure whether the students have achieved the desired cognitive levels, desired competence, and desired affective domain related characteristics, when these knowledge blocks are delivered to them, there has to be a way to measure that. And we have to now identify this cognitive level at which we have to measure their achievements. So if you bring back in your memory this little image that I have pasted on left top, which shows you the cognitive process dimensions there, and the levels, various levels, and the scope defined by each level. So I'm applying the same principle here now. So I'm saying that desired level of cognition for the first knowledge block of factual, I want the students to be assessed at understand level. For the second block of factual knowledge block, I want students to be assessed at apply level. And likewise, I'm taking a conscious decision about the level at which the students have to be assessed. And I'm just now writing it in front of each of the knowledge block. You can notice the change here that in certain cases the factual level knowledge I have to assess them at apply level. In the case of procedural knowledge, I am trying to take them to even evaluate level. And then if I have to now measure their performance according to these levels, naturally I have to create questions or create assignments such a way that the measurement of these levels is possible. And that's the idea we are trying to drive here. But before we think about the questions, we have to think about the outcomes to be achieved by the students. And now it can be easily done, very easily done, if this model is ready in front of you. What you can do now is think about the knowledge dimension and think about the desired level of cognition. These are the 2 different levels we are bringing together now, like this. So here I'm putting this knowledge dimension on your, let's say, y dimension, and this is your x dimension, axis rather. And I'm thinking about factual and understand, right? Which was the first one, factual and understand. So this is the junction point. And I get a label to this junction point. Let's say summarize. Now summarize, there could be other also. I'm just giving an example. This is a group of the action verbs that designate this junction point. One of the examples is summarize. So if summarize is suitable for us to say that students are achieving this desired cognition level here. So let me use that word here, key action verb, for this particular junction point. For the next junction point, I have respond to frequently asked questions, for example, right? I have another junction point there. For conceptual and apply, I have provide as the junction point. Differentiate is another label. Integrate is another label. Judge is another label. So these are the action verbs I am picking from the junction points of these two dimensions. And then I come out with my own list of action verbs here. This is very easy, right? We looked at these two dimensions, and then we identified the junction point, and then we picked up the right action verb, which is going to help us design the outcomes at the course level. Right? I may have chosen a couple of more action verbs here, and here justify would belong to affective domain level, metacognition level requirements. Assemble also will be related with procedural level requirements here. So here I would rephrase that, if you allow me. It could be those who are interested to also look at it from the perspective of the domains, 3 domains we talked about: cognition, psychomotor, and affective. If you want to stick to that terminology, then you will see that, okay, assemble is a good keyword that is required for the psychomotor domain. Justify seems good for your affective domain or metacognitive, right? So they are used interchangeably. At times I will also, my slip of tongue also will make me say those terms interchangeably, but I mean the same. I'm trying to be consistent in the vocabulary that I'm using, but at times I might cross that boundary. So here what I'm trying to do is creating a set of action verbs and then see whether it helps me design the course outcomes. Now actually this is very simple. If typically if you use this model, maybe within 45 minutes to 60 minutes you will come out with extremely well designed course outcomes of your course. The moment we go step to the next level, you will believe in what I just said. Now, before actually we talk about the assignments, I should take this slide out and put somewhere else. Let's first of all finish the design process of the course outcomes. So we have here a 4-step course outcome designing. Now you identified already, we identified already the action verb. That is the first part of our statement. The second part is the knowledge level it represents. And now here the knowledge level is, this is the name to be given to the knowledge blocks, right? And I'll just rewind this a bit. This is the knowledge block here, right? So instead of calling it as factual, conceptual, you may label it to represent the block of the knowledge that is being delivered, right? It could be thermodynamics, right? Or it could be design of nuts and bolts, maybe. It could be applying the concepts, ability to create, analyze stress, maybe, or ability to design entity relationship diagram. And so that whatever that is required to create that ability, certain knowledge is delivered, and that may be represented by a block I'm giving very simple examples. It may not be that easy, obviously, but the idea here is to name these blocks and use these terms that are used to name refer those blocks as a second part of your course outcome statement. And then the third and the fourth are optional parts of the design, but the condition here that is given by you, in under which the students have to show the whether or not they achieved this outcome. So for that, you may design a condition and you may add a criteria also. Many times when I think about condition and criteria, I tend to think that this is a better place to make these outcomes talk about the psychomotor and the affective domain requirements, or in other words, to show.
Excuse me, sir.
Mhm.
Sorry to disturb you. Some participant has in between presented their video, so please, I request that participant to not present it. And sir, your screen is not visible because of that.
Oh, okay. At the moment, is it visible?
No, sir. Right now, it is not visible.
And earlier it was visible, right?
It was visible, yes.
Oh, okay. That's good news.
Just a moment. Please request all to check their presentation. Somebody is presenting, I think. Please keep your videos off, all participants.
Actually, if I am presenting, then others' screen should not be.
Now it is visible, sir.
Now
sir,
my
it is
screen.
visible. It is visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Mhm. Okay.
Yes, it is
Hello.
visible. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me go ahead now. So here we were talking about these four components of the course outcome design. The knowledge part of the course outcome comes from the representation of the knowledge block that we talked about. And then the condition and criteria, although they are optional parts, but they make the course outcome statement very powerful. And you can actually use these two areas, these components, very creatively for accommodating the requirements of psychomotor domain and the affective domain. In other words, the requirements of your the skill level course outcome, program outcomes, and the affective or attitude level program outcomes. So what I mean by that is, if you want this to be defined, instead of creating one more different course outcome, you may say that under certain condition, let's say the student should be able to demonstrate whether or not the experiment is done under certain conditions, and when the answer is obtained, then it has to be compared with some kind of, let's say, globally defined scale, some reference point, or some kind of heuristics that is required to be referred, and then come out with their own analysis of whether or not why the answer was a little far off from the heuristics that is defined globally, or it is matching, or it is not matching, is low, high, whatever. After they achieve their results, they should be able to analyze that, why they were far off from the desired level defined in that heuristics. All such possibilities are there for you to accommodate these other requirements of your outcomes in the bottom two parts of the statements, rather the components right here, and that makes it more powerful. Let's take examples of such course outcomes. The three examples are here. very nicely designed ones. I found these references in NAAC manual. So describe general taxonomic rules on animal classification. Easily you can find out 3 components used here. In the next example also you can find 3 components. In this example, there are 4 components used, right? Very clearly defined, very nicely designed course outcome here. Incorrectly designed course outcomes, students will execute mini projects, right? You immediately now you can say this is incorrectly designed, this is also incorrectly designed, and this is also incorrectly designed. I have come across with course outcomes, designing done not by looking at all at the program outcomes, not at all looking at the knowledge blocks, what kind of knowledge level the course is being delivered. Nothing. There was absolutely no reference to any of these requirements. The only focus was unit. How many units are there? 5. Design 5 course outcomes. How many units are there? 6. Okay, design 6 outcomes. That's it. Nothing beyond that. And now when it comes to measuring it, when it comes to see whether these course outcomes are helping students to achieve the program outcomes, total disconnect. Why? Because there was no thought given at all about what program outcomes are being met by these course outcomes. So naturally, there is a disconnect, complete disconnect. So when a discussion begins about how program outcome attainment has to be analyzed, then I have found examples of one course outcome being mapped to all 12 program outcomes. It is impossible to have that kind of condition. So all the 4-5 course outcomes I have seen mapped to all the 12 program outcomes, and that this kind of confusions happen because there is absolutely no clarity about why course outcomes are designed. What are they supposed to do here? And the next level of confusion is that how do I identify whether my course outcome is associated with PO1, PO2, PO3, or PO5, and what is the degree of affinity? Is it slight, moderate, or substantial? That adds a lot of other confusion in the designing of program structure. However, what happens is that once we design the course outcome, next level is to think about how to measure it, and for that the assessments have to be that come in picture, and then you may then decide what type of assessment tool you will use for measuring the outcomes for that course. And this is the mapping that is required, that whether you will assess this in formative assessments or summative assessments. In my opinion, formative assessments are the most important part of the outcome-based education. Now, there is a misconception that it is because the moment you conduct the first formative assessment, immediately the results can be used for gap analysis, and then remedial actions planning, and then we're checking whether in the next assessment there has been some improvement or drop in the improvement. And that is why formative assessments are actually the most important part of continuous improvement. And however, if you look at the accreditation specifications, the weightage is given higher to the summative assessments which are conducted by university. We know why that is happening, right? But however, we can't say discuss that officially on platforms like this. However, it is, if we start thinking about implementation of outcome-based education, formative assessments are the most important part of continuous improvement, and not the summative one, because by the time the summative assignment happens, the time is gone, the batch is out, and there is no time available for the teacher to act on something. And the only time this teacher can act on something is when the next batch comes, and the profile of the next batch could be different. However, that's the reason formative assessments are very important in my opinion. Now, if you are trying to measure their skills from the psychomotor point of view and metacognitive knowledge from the point of view of affective domain related requirements, then naturally you will have to design the assignments little differently than just a theory paper. These are the assignments or the other environments created for the students to perform and exhibit whether they are achieving those outcomes at psychomotor or affective domain level, which are related with skill and attitude in the other term used here. I hope this is clear, but I have to go ahead. Before that, I will check whether there are any questions.
So there is a question from Megharaja. In social science, how to quantify the outcomes with examples?
So my suggestion is to use a model like this and come out with, first of all, knowledge dimensions covered by social science, knowledge blocks, identify the desired level of cognition for each of these blocks, and then design the outcomes. If this model is not useful for social science related course, I would love to know that and then correct my thought process. So Professor Meghraj, would you mind sharing your thoughts on why this model cannot be used by you?
Meghraj sir.
Not a problem, actually. We can take this offline also. But in my opinion, this model is course agnostic. So now, what happens to that?
I had one question.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know, because what is the minimum number or maximum number of course outcomes? Is there any concept such as like these many course outcomes only has to be there? I'm just talking about the course outcomes.
Yeah. So here now, this is your course. Let's say this is a half credit course, right? How many units you will come out with? How many knowledge dimensions you will come out with? And how many blocks you will come out with? 2, 3, 4, 5. And based on that, you associate one course outcome for each of these knowledge blocks. So if your course is a very small half credit course, more than, let's say, 2 knowledge blocks, so the course outcomes will be just 2, in my opinion. So there has to be a representation of the desired level of cognition that needs to be assessed for each of these knowledge blocks that are there in your course, and that gives you the number of course outcomes to be designed. So this is all about how many knowledge blocks that you see in your course, how knowledge dimensions being covered by your course. Club that, bring those out, and then think about how each of these knowledge blocks have to be assessed and what level of the cognition the student should be assessed at, and based on that, choose a right action verb and design your course outcome. It's as simple as this.
Sir, there are 2 more questions. Should I read them?
Yes.
One question first from Saurabh Bajpai. Is course outcome based on units or total marks? For example, if in any subject there is 5 units, then there must be 5 COs. Is it like
The
that?
question.
Hello,
No, I
sir. Huh.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think so. That is related with the marks actually, because yeah, it is the steps to define the course outcome doesn't reach that level at all. After we design the course outcome, the assessments come in picture, and then how the importance of that knowledge block will automatically define the what should be the weightage given, how differently the specific knowledge block has to be assessed, whether there should be one assignment, two assignments, three assignments, because according to you, it is extremely important for the students to achieve the desired level of competence by learning the knowledge block of your course. Let's say out of 5, one of those knowledge blocks is extremely important. Why? The answer is hidden in the kind of program level outcome this knowledge block is hitting, and if that program outcome is extremely important according to you to for the students to get a very good institute for higher education, or to get a job, good job, or create, let's say, entrepreneurial skills. If you believe that program outcome 6 is substantially associated with a knowledge block, I will say that, hey, why don't you assess the students again and again, give more importance and weightage to that. And that is the kind of thought process is required to come out with an idea about what should be the weightage given to a particular knowledge block. And that is why right from beginning I was giving this input and reference about how outcome-based education can easily be taken towards employability outcomes improvement framework. And this is how it can be done.
Some more questions are there. Sapna Sharma asking, course outcome defines us to move in prescribed way. Sometime we may take topic in depth. So is CO affected by that, sir?
Sorry, please repeat.
Course outcome defines us to move in prescribed way. Sometime we may take the topic in depth. So is course outcome affected by that?
If you believe that the course outcomes are limiting your teaching, you are more creative teacher, and you don't want to be bound by the definitions of the course outcome, I think you should change the course outcomes in that case.
Maybe sometimes we are going in the depth, sir. That's why maybe it is not been like sometimes POs may be moving in out of the way. So therefore, I'm asking that way, sir. Is doing or taking the topic in depth does not affect that too?
Yeah, actually, yes. I see where you're coming from. See this. Obviously, this is not a OB framework is a step taken towards implementation of something very useful.
Yeah.
And then obviously it doesn't limit you to go beyond and use your own creative ways to help students achieve the outcome. Finally, at the end of the day, you will have to still prove that the methods that you employed to go deeper has been helping the students to achieve those outcomes. Finally, at the end of the day, you have to still prove that. And if you believe those course outcomes are limiting the ways in which you want to really teach the subject, please change the course outcomes.
Okay.
And make those more meaningful. Add, let's say, these conditions and criteria also, and see whether these course outcomes are meeting some of the program outcomes for which
surely mapping
is needed, because your course exists there because it is supposed to help students achieve some program outcome.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Otherwise, this course is supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, next question is from Dr. Shikha Maheshwari.
Okay.
Are summative assessments only the way to evaluate psychomotor and affective domains? If so, why?
No, it's not like that actually. You can have actually the summative assessment is not at all the assessment for actually psychomotor and affective skills to large extent. To certain extent, yes, but not to large extent, because the activities like a student going in the workshop, if he is a mechanical engineering student, and he or she has to work on CNC machine to show the applying of the knowledge of how to create adding the program for the CNC machine to automate the machining of those parts. And if this translation doesn't happen, then the student remains at understand level and can't go to the apply level. And that's why the activity has to be designed such a way this allows them to go to apply level or analyze level. So this is possible only by creating those formative assessments and not by designing a summative assessment, unless this course itself is a project. Then obviously a summative assessment would mean that, okay, finally you start with designing estimation, buy the components, machine doors or whatever, and then assemble and show me as variable as and that is your summative assessment. If you show me this, that's your summative assessment is over. So that's the way I look at it. So in my opinion, many things can be done in the formative assessments only. Summative assessment should be actually should be made less important in the context of outcome-based education.
So some more questions. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's too late to assess the student in summative assessment because a lot of important time is already gone. Yeah, please.
Should we take questions, sir?
Do we have time for that? Let me see.
Sir, how much from his presentation?
Yeah, we will need another 15 minutes to go through this.
Okay, so
yeah,
we will take it at the end. 3 to 4 questions are there.
Yes, we can take those after this.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Okay, so where were we? We were at we just finished the designing of the course outcome. So recall our case study. We are supposed to design a program from the scratch, and we are going step by step downwards because it's a top-down design process. And now what is happening now is now I think our designing process is almost over because we already thought about the assessments. We now debated about assessments also just now. So now let's talk about analysis. Now from here onwards, the journey begins towards the analysis. How the data now rolls up from every question, it moves upwards, and from that context, this discussion is now important. So now onwards, our journey towards the measurement of outcomes begins. Before that, now let's look at the big picture. Now, so far, we were talking about 1 course, 2 course, 4 outcomes, 5 outcomes. Now let's talk about the big picture of the entire blueprint of the program. So this is the blueprint, right? At your right side, I'm considering all the program outcomes here, and categories are also shown here. Knowledge, skill, and attitude, and also the knowledge levels associated with them: factual, conceptual, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. Right. So colors show you these boundaries. And what else is there? We have courses here, semesters, and I'm considering that there are 5 courses in each of the semesters. So if you are part of 2-year post-graduation degree program, naturally you can consider 4 semesters here. Those who belong to 3-year degree program, they can consider 6 semesters here. So this is extensible and applicable to any type of graduation or post-graduation programs. Concepts is same. So what I am now thinking, I've been thinking what we have so far discussed is that what program outcomes I want to achieve and what courses are there. So I've identified that these are the courses which are helping me achieve PO1 and PO2, right? And if I would then think about course number 3 here, let's say it gives me 5 course outcomes, CO1, CO2, CO3, CO4, CO5. And now if I think about how do I map these course outcomes with the program outcomes, so that my interweaving of all the loose components here and there is complete, and this framework is tight, so that I can start analysis. So that's why this concept is very important. So how do I say that how many of these course outcomes are helping me to achieve those program outcomes? Do I have association of all the COs equally with all the POs or not? How do I decide that? Now, therefore, to take a good guess, right, you have to bring back our discussion and refer to this diagram, this depiction, which we discussed a while ago. Here, what we see here is that there are 2 knowledge blocks, and they're supposed to fulfill the requirement. I mean, the level of cognition has to be understand and apply. And based on that, we had designed the program course outcomes here. Now, since this particular course belongs to factual and conceptual knowledge only, naturally, this course will have all the blue knowledge blocks belonging to factual and conceptual, and yellow block for the conceptual, sorry. And we will have a limit of the action verbs also, because we are focused on only the knowledge level POs here, and that's why these courses are shown in yellow color to designate that they're mainly taking care of these program outcomes. So then I will say that the possibility of this affinity could be like this. CO1 is mainly targeting PO1 based on this kind of depiction that I am coming out with. CO2 may have moderate affinity with PO1 and substantial with PO2. Now, you may say that I am not able to find out any variation here. All the POs are equally being made by all the COs. So you may say that, argue that CO1 has, and all the COs have same affinity level. That is perfectly all right, as long as you believe that that's the way the affinity should be defined. It may be possible also, because these courses are so inclined towards helping the student achieve the factual and conceptual knowledge. Is always a possibility of all the COs of this will have substantial affinity with those 2 POs. So this is one example. Now let's take another example. Here I have taken 2 more courses from my course bank, which is at the left side. I'm showing a shade of pink there, which represents that these 2 courses are now started taking care of certain program outcomes in the skill category also. So let's say PO3 is also being addressed by these 2 courses. Then what will happen? Naturally, the POs we define for these course outcomes will have multiple mappings with multiple program outcomes, and their affinity level may change like this. It may be slight, moderate, substantial in certain cases, and in certain cases it could be in the case of, let's say, CO3, which is mapped to 3 different POs, may have 3 different affinity levels also. And this is very clearly visible after you create a blueprint like this. That how do I say define the affinity levels between my COs and the POs? Can I find some correlation? And once the model is applied step by step, in this manner, it becomes extremely easy, clear, visible about, and show you how the course outcomes are actually helping you to achieve those program outcomes and what is the degree of affinity between them. So this is one of the examples. Models, again, disclaimer is that this may not be suitable for each and every course of your program. May work, may not work. The effectiveness may be 40%, 30%, 90%, or 100%. It will vary, but it gives you a way to think and come out with a reasonably well designed program design. Right. So let me finish the mapping of remaining courses in this manner, and then complete our blueprint of the program design, which gives you now enough idea of how various program outcomes are achieved by various courses here, and the kind of affinity that they have. As you can see here, the advancement of the courses and the knowledge levels is happening here over a period of time, and these courses are covering more and more skill and attitude level knowledge requirements, and that also shows that the profile of the assignments being designed is necessary to be changed according to the program outcomes these courses are hitting. So this design has a direct impact on the way the assignments are being designed, and that is what precisely we are going to now discuss here. So what is happening over a period of time on your the courses that are being covered, the cognitive process is going from simple to advanced level, simple to complex level, and likewise the psychomotor domain and affective domain related outcomes, which are nothing but skill and attitude level outcomes, are also being have to be covered, because the courses are going towards advanced level. They are helping the student to work in groups, then do a presentation, and also apply the skill on the ground level, go out of this classroom and then show that they are applying or not. So there are enough such assignments and activities that are created to show that they are achieving those outcomes. So so slowly, once when the courses are going forward towards the advanced level, naturally after some time the skill level POs will start coming in pictures, and then assignments and will have to be designed differently. When it comes to affective domain level assignments and activities, those are nothing but the observations made by the teacher, directly or indirectly. And that's the reason it's not so simple, because teachers may not present all the time when the students are performing an activity. So it's difficult, but still these are the ways to measure the outcomes of related to attitude domain or attitude level of the category of the POs. There are certain activities that can be designed so that teachers can observe them and see whether they are taking interest. Are they ready to volunteer something? Let's say blood donation camp, and whether the group of students is ready to take the challenge and talk to the local blood bank, arrange their camp there, put the things on the notice board, communicate with everyone, invite them, and that's the kind of activity that will help them to show whether they are achieving those program level outcomes related to attitude category. Take a position. So if you ask them, hey, tell me what your group discussions are the good examples of this attitude level PO, and then if you ask them a question like you yesterday, I think we took this example, and then if they are taking a stand, that shows them shows their value, and then that's an assessment of their value system, and that's nothing but the attitude that comes out. So it's about actually designing, reconfiguring the assignments to for which helps us to measure those outcomes at the course level and likewise at the program level. So what we just discussed, I'm now representing this by showing you these blocks of the knowledge levels that we are delivering using with the help of these courses. Now you can see less factual and conceptual, more procedural and less metacognitive, and last block could be more and more procedural and metacognitive. These are the ways the courses are designed. Now, obviously, we discussed about this also. Obviously, it will have impact on the way the questions are being designed. So you will have more percentage of the questions belonging to remember, understand, less to apply. But slowly, the percentage of the questions related to remember, understand has to gradually go down, and the higher order thinking skill related questions have to be increased. So the percentages have to go up. Likewise, the reason I've shown this evaluating rate compared to this is that to show that there are more questions needed here to be at that level for such courses to be, for the students to be evaluated at for the courses which are part of this block here. So again, this gives you an idea of how the framing of the questions could be done based on this model, and why this is required. Finally, this is required for identifying the gaps. So if we are not framing the questions accordingly, if those are too simple and not too many questions being asked at those desired levels here, then naturally what is going to happen, the performance is going to swell up, and that is showing us the false positive performance of the students. So it's not showing any gaps, but there are gaps, right? And those gaps could be identified by defining the right percentage of the questions here. So you may come up with your own framework of the percentage of the questions being to be asked in each of these categories, and then based on that, if a sufficient number of questions are designed, and then there will be a consistency in the way the gaps are being analyzed. And this consistency is important because when it comes to analyzing the performance of students for the first batch, the numbers may not talk too much because there is no reference point. But as there are more data that starts coming in the system from subsequent batches, then you will have suddenly 3 to 4 batch data, and you can easily then compare the previous batches, draw some correlations, longitudinal analysis can be done, trend analysis can be done, some predictive analysis also can be done, and that is a kind of projection or insights are possible with the analysis of the data done consistently, but with reference of some agreed framework of outcomes. Now let's take one more example before we conclude this particular topic. We know that quite a few courses covered in the first couple of or 3 semesters are the foundation for the advanced level courses coming in the subsequent terms. So if you have a teacher of semester 5 knows that a course here in semester 3 is important foundation for his or her course here, and so this teacher can watch the performance of students from the earlier semester, and if this student teacher knows that the batch that is coming next year to me has already has analysis of this student is already done, and the weakness is shown in certain knowledge blocks, So before I begin my course delivery, I must fix those gaps. So I will actually start my delivery of the courses by covering first of all those gaps, the remedial actions rather I will plan, and then the actual course delivery begins. So my course plan for that semester will have this reflection of my analysis done based on the students coming to me. In medical education, they have more sophisticated and a wonderful idea is already implemented by them. They call it as horizontal or vertical integration. So I would actually give this reference here because, if this teacher of 5th semester is watching the performance of the 3rd semester course, which is foundation for 5th semester course, then if I'm finding that always the students in last 4 or 5 batches, I found that they're always missing out these concepts. Why can't I plan one lecture while these students are here, and I'll teach them why certain concepts are important for them to learn better, deeper, because my advanced course, I am going to teach you these things. And for that, you require good understanding of these, knowledge levels. Your cognitive process should go up to analyze here, and then you will be able to understand and learn my course better. And you have to learn my course better because this course is very important from the perspective of some employability requirements, some competence that they want in you. If your dream job is going to General Electric, then you must know in depth what I am teaching you. You must absorb that really well. Vertical integration I am talking about. This teacher from the 5th semester going to the 3rd semester class and taking one lecture or 2 lectures. And then that's the remedial action, in my opinion. There's nothing different than this could be called as a remedial action, which is taken by the teacher of the 5th semester course. And that saves a lot of time. So this is the way outcome-based education framework design can give you a lot of clarity in many things about the teaching process and the learning process. I'm open to questions now.
Yes, sir. There is a question from Santhini. How effective the course outcome-based education in medical professional? Is there any country successfully following the course outcome-based system?
Actually, the medical.
Ajay, can I answer this?
Yes, sir. I was actually. Yes. Dr. Jamkar is ex Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences. He is a very senior, renowned medical educationist, and I thank you for attending this FDP, sir. I am overwhelmed due to your presence.
No. My only aim to attend these FDPs was to find out what is the similarity between, say, medical education and technical education. And I think in medical education, we have done all these advanced steps, and they are already being implemented in India, and all over the world they are already implemented maybe 5 years, 10 years before. So outcome-based education relating to what is called as a competency-based medical education is completely mapped, and in fact, the Imports company, which is headed by Ajay Bhagwat, we agreed. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Now you're audible.
So, as regard this, actually, I just wanted the technical teachers to think in that direction of translating outcome-based education to competencies, because competencies in technical education are better understandable, and they might lead to a better job prospect, and maybe can map with the requirement of competencies of a respective job across the companies to the universities. Therefore, the gap between university education and actual requirement by, say, industry will be gone. So I think we need to map all of them together. As regards medical education, we already have everything available. As I said, now let us say we have all those blocks available. We have anatomy, physiology in the first year, second year, third year, and then we have all those competencies available. And is everything is mapped, how it is to be taught, whether it be a classroom lecture, whether it is to be in a group discussion, clinical discussion, everything is mapped. In addition, we have vertical integration, horizontal integration. That means suppose somebody is talking of respiratory system, same time the anatomist will talk of respiratory system, the physiology will talk of same thing. At the same time, there is a vertical integration where a respiratory medicine expert will talk. So as a net result, this whole integration is perfect, and we go all beyond. Maybe I'll request all of you to go to a Medical Council of India website to get a complete overview. And we already are implementing. This is the second year of implementation of, now we call it as a competency-based medical education, and we are already doing. I would appreciate same step if it is taken by technical education, identifying these outcomes to competencies. And I think this is beautiful because we follow a similar pattern we call as Miller's pyramid, where knows how, does, and does how. These are all labels are available. Maybe same levels could be translated in that term. And I'm very happy as you talk about affective domain, because in medicine, affective domain is most important, because it's not the patient important. It's all this psychology, what the emotions, how he feels. These are all important, I think. And I think engineering teachers are thinking in same direction. I think it's fantastic. So we could have actually some sessions from medical educationist for technical teachers, so that this could be amalgamated. I think we are talking the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So next question is how to calculate if single CO is mapped with two different modules? From Mr. Sheikh.
A single CO, you are mapping to the modules, right? So the question that you will frame, there will be a question related to module 1, which will be mapped to CO1, and there could be another 2-3 different questions related to module 2, which also be mapped to CO1. So there is no problem here in measuring those outcome of from these questions of CO1. I'm going to actually show you how attainment computation is done in the session tomorrow. So these questions will get clarified in tomorrow's session, sir.
Next question is from Sumati. How many POs can be framed for a program?
Now we have to go back to the discussion about the graduate attributes, and from there you actually have to choose. We can choose the right graduate attributes for your given undergraduate or post-graduation programs. I know that for management post-graduation, there's an MBA, Business Administration Masters. They have taken 6 to 7 program outcomes only. The engineering degree program says that you have to take 12 outcomes, program outcomes, and add your own 3 to 5 program specific outcomes. So if somebody designs 5 program specific outcomes, then the total number of program outcomes will be 17 compared to 6, 7, 8 for Masters in Business Administration program, right? So this will obviously depend on the program that is being designed by you, and obviously the number of courses are required to achieve those program outcomes that are taken by you as the set of outcomes to be achieved by the students. So the number is not important here. It could be 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20. What is more important is that why the students will go through this program, for what purpose. just being socially recognized, or you want them to go and take a job in the desired field of application, or become a self-employed person, or go for higher education. Let's say my dream goal is to, after completing the graduation, I want to go for achieve the GATE score and then take an admission in one of the best colleges in India. And so the students coming out of this degree program should be able to achieve one of these 3, 4, 5 different goals in their life. And that is the reason I am going to design this program. And that is the reason students are going to take the admission in my program. So that this is what will decide how many program outcomes your students should achieve.
Sir, there are many questions coming. How many should we take right now?
We have time till what, 5:30, right? 4-5 minutes.
Yes. So 2-3 questions we can address, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the questions they can post on Telegram group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next question is from Harmit Khanuja. With the online education due to pandemic, how effectively the evaluation of students is effective online?
Yes, it is a special variation that has occurred in our day-to-day teaching learning process. So if you ask this question to a statistician, the statistician would say that just ignore this special variation because this will come and go. If online examinations, I know where you are coming from. There could be some cheating. Students may refer some other sources. Somebody will prompt them, and what they would answer will not be the real performance of the student. And then whether we should consider this performance as a reference point for outcome-based education or analysis. If that is the question, then naturally this is a special variation that has occurred in our day-to-day life. This will come and go, and naturally we'll be back on the regular pattern of our examination. Now, a side question that you may want to ask yourself is that whether the students answer the questions in the classroom in an exam, with the integrity that you believe should be there. And if you're finding that this integrity is diluted further in online examination, and to what extent, then probably we will have a better answer to the question.
Okay, sir. Next question is from Gaganjot Kaur. How to maintain the average percentage of performance outcome for the course outcomes being mapped with POs when we have more students below threshold level?
We can discuss this tomorrow because we are exactly covering such aspects in tomorrow's WebDP.
Yes, sir. There is a question from Suparna. Please elaborate on COPO mapping with respect to determining the degree of affinity.
Here, so the reference point that we had taken was like this. So I wanted to add some courses in the 3rd semester which will help me achieve some program outcomes at the skill level. And some of the courses which I'm showing here are also touching the attitude related program outcomes. So there has to be some assignments that I have to design to make the students achieve these outcomes, right? So what I will say, I'll actually look at the breakdown of my course in this manner. I'll find out what is how many knowledge blocks are there which are covering the skill part. How many of them are covering the attitude part? Based on that, I will actually get a fair idea about what is the orientation of my course. How much of this blue color is going towards, is getting intensified. This is nothing but another representation of the knowledge blocks that I was talking about earlier, right? So here, that will give you a fair idea of that. Okay, this course is there, which is also covering slightly the requirements of attitude. Let's say PO8 here. So I'll say that this course has one CO which is related with PO8, and it has got slight mapping. It's not there fully. Slightly it is taking care of that. This is what my way of looking at it. Because we are talking about a model, right? We don't have an exact example of a course, and that's why we are talking about a model. So I will say that, okay, this is a slight affinity, but the other knowledge blocks are dedicated to skill and factual conceptual knowledge. Naturally, the other program course outcomes of this course will have moderate or substantial affinity with those program outcomes related to these categories. That is the idea that I am trying to present here, to define the affinity levels between the COs and the POs. So if it is getting confused, right, the best is to just forget about these affinity levels and say that all mappings are substantial. What will happen? It will have some impact in the computation of the PO annually. But this is the other kind of experiments and the research the teachers will have to do in their field of education in going forward to so that other educators will be able to use these reference points, these research papers, to implement these ideas concretely.
Yeah. I will take the last question.
Mhm.
I request participants to post their questions on Telegram group. We will forward it to sir. So last question from Kavita is that, can psychomotor and attitude domain be assessed virtually as we are pushed to due to this pandemic?
Absolutely. Actually, I saw yesterday, I was a participant. I was observing a group discussion happening online, which was conducted by a company and for campus drive. And I was actually observing it, and there was a question given to them, and around 5 to 6 students were connected with each other on Zoom, and this group discussion happened. So this is an exact and very nice example of an activity designed for any of these attitude level POs. For example, communication skills, maybe it will belong to. So online assessment of psychomotor and affective domain POs is definitely possible. Presentation, right now, the presentation skill I am demonstrating to you, it is online.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for answering those many questions. Many questions are there. So I again request participants to keep the questions posting on the group.
Thank you very much.
I request now to Professor Nita Shirsak, Madam, to conclude this session. Please, Madam.
Yes, madam. Thank you.
Madam, unmute your mic, madam. Unmute your mic.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. This is Neeta Shirsat once again on the behalf of Team IQSC PVG COET Pune. I just want to mention major highlight of today's session. COPO affinity correlation level are best described by sir. And cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain, affinity domain is very clear now. Thank you very much, sir. Ajay Bhagwat sir, for such a delightful and remarkable session. Today's session was really phenomenal. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank all participants for patiently listening and participating in question answer session. Feedback link of day 2 is shared on Telegram group and chat also. Feedback link will be open for next one hour. It is mandatory for all participants to fill the feedback to issue an e-certificate. So I declare here that today's session is over. We will meet tomorrow again. Link for tomorrow's session will be shared on Telegram group. Thank you. Have a great time ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.